Last week, I checked out the very awesome Gigabyte GTX 1080 Phoenix Goes Like Hell edition, and if it wasn't obvious, I very much like Gigabyte's take on the GeForce GTX 1080. The card's operating temps were impressively low, just 68 degrees under full load, while it never exceeded 73 degrees when overclocked, all while remaining very quiet. The overclocking performance was also very good, delivering my best results to date. Overall, the big bulky cooler and redesigned PCB got the job done. Going back 2 weeks, I checked out the Gigabyte GTX 1080 G1 Gaming. This was a decent offering from Gigabyte, though it was only marginally better than the Founders Edition card in my opinion. Gigabyte are clearly targeting the $600 MSRP with that model, and currently pricing is around the $650 US or $1150 AU mark. Now, taking things to the next level is Gigabyte's GTX 1080 Xtreme gaming model, which commands a $700 US or $1250 Australian dollar price tag for the gaming premium pack, which is virtual reality ready. So, what makes the Xtreme gaming model worthy of the name and, more importantly, the price premium? In short, pretty much everything has been upgraded over the G1 gaming model. Out of the box, the Xtreme Gaming operates at higher clock speeds. The Xtreme Gaming delivers a base clock of 1670 MHz and a boost clock of 1873 MHz in gaming mode and up to 1898 MHz in OC mode. This is a step up from the G1 Gaming's boost clock speed of 1784 MHz in gaming mode and 1822 MHz in OC mode. On top of the PCB, the Xtreme Gaming features a new second generation triple slot, triple fan cooler using Gigabyte's WindForce 3X design. This patent pending design is able to accommodate 3 huge 100mm fans without stretching the card length beyond 300mm, as you might expect 3 fans of that size to do. Gigabyte has achieved this space-saving feat by overlapping the fans. Normally this would create a lot of turbulence, which could reduce cooling performance and, more importantly, generate quite a bit of noise. This has been circumvented by using a counter-rotating center fan. Gigabyte says this provides up to 10% more airflow than conventional triple fan coolers, and that's the power of WindForce, people. The fans feature double ball bearings to ensure the Xtreme Gaming goes the distance. The 3D active fan feature enables silent, semi-passive fans, allowing gamers to enjoy gameplay in absolute silence when the system is running light or at idle. An LED fan stop indicator provides a user-friendly, instant display of the fan status. Adding a bit of bling to this cooler is of course the RGB lighting. The LED-powered X illuminates on the center of the shroud, while there's another LED-powered Xtreme Gaming logo on the side, creating an awesome effect for those with case windows. As for the Xtreme Gaming's length, it measures 289mm long, which is virtually the same length of the Gigabyte Phoenix GLH model. In fact, it's just 4mm longer. The Xtreme Gaming is noticeably heavier though, and there's a good reason for this. Removing the cooler reveals a massive copper base that covers not just the GPU, but also the GDDR5X memory chips. There's also 6 very long 6mm copper heat pipes snaking their way through the 2 large arrays of aluminium fins. Removing the cooler also exposes the PCB, and what we have here is a completely reworked masterpiece that measures 267mm long and 121mm tall. For the Xtreme Gaming model, Gigabyte has employed a 12+2 power phase design, which should allow the Xtreme Gaming to work at a lower temperature and provide more stable voltage output, both of which should improve overclocking and extend the life of the card. Gigabyte also claimed to be using Titan X-grade chokes and capacitors for greater durability. Another cool feature is the aerospace-grade PCB coating, which Gigabyte claims protects the graphics card and all its vital components from dust, insects, drop screws, drill shavings, and abrasion. Probably more useful for power users are the moisture-resistant properties, which are said to prevent unwanted conduction paths that ultimately lead to board failure. Now, I wouldn't want to test this feature, but it could be a handy insurance measure just in case your water cooling system springs a leak. The card's also backed by Xtreme Care 4-year warranty, although it isn't entirely clear if the warranty covers water damage. Finally, as an added layer of protection, Gigabyte has covered the rear of the PCB in a large, attractive backplate. Moving on, we find dual 8-pin PCI Express power connectors capable of feeding the Xtreme Gaming graphics card up to 300 watts. That's twice the PCIe power input of the Founders Edition card. Finally, at the end of the PCB, there are 2 internal HDMI connectors which connect to the Xtreme VR Link module provided in the premium pack. This link module also features a pair of easy to access USB 3 ports, which will be handy for connecting controllers and the whatnot. Along with the Xtreme VR Link module, the premium pack also includes an Xtreme VR Link extended bracket, XMP 300 mousepad, wrist protector, PCIe power cable adapter, an Xtreme Gaming sticker, and a custom designed high bandwidth SLI bridge that matches the Xtreme Gaming graphics card. Those of you wanting to overclock the GTX 1080 Xtreme Gaming can turn to Gigabyte's own Xtreme Engine software, which I found very useful when testing the G1 gaming model. The software enables easy overclocking and allows the user to increase the thermal target as well as the power target. The user can monitor the GPU's vitals, and easy overclocking modes exist, along with the more complex manual overclocking options. Voltage states can be adjusted, and custom fan curves can also be created. Finally, the all-important RGB lighting can be configured here, and there's a few of the more standard effects to play with. When it came to overclocking, we were able to increase the memory speed by 612 MHz, resulting in total frequency of 5400 MHz. The core was pushed to a base clock of 1839 MHz with a boost clock speed of 1978 MHz. Of course, due to Nvidia's GPU Boost 3.0, we know the card can run faster than the suggested boost clock if kept under the thermal and power targets. In the case of the Xtreme Gaming, this allowed the card to hold an operating frequency of 2.1 GHz after a 20-minute stress test, which was most impressive. So, why don't we jump into the benchmarks and see how the Xtreme Gaming got on then? First on the testing agenda is Battlefield 4, where the overclocked 1080 Xtreme Gaming topped our charts with 124 FPS. This was 6 more frames than its out-of-the-box configuration, which was a negligible single frame behind our previously tested Game With Goes Like Hell edition. Compared to Gigabyte's other G1 gaming card and the Founders Edition 1080, the Xtreme Gaming was good for an additional 8 frames per second. The card rankings at 4K were quite similar to 1440p, with the overclocked Xtreme Gaming card proving to be our fastest single card tested with 63 FPS. In its standard config, it was again neck and neck with its board partner rival for GameWid, and was 3 FPS better than the Founders Edition card. Our next game tested was Cry Primal, where again our 1080 variants all fell within a few frames of each other. Overclocking gave only a small 4-frame boost here, and was required to get just 2 FPS ahead of our overclocked Founders Edition card. At 88 FPS with a minimum of 73, gamers can enjoy a super smooth experience at this resolution with everything maxed out. Now at 4K, the overclocked Xtreme Gaming was slowed to 47 FPS in this demanding AAA title. This overclock only netted us an extra 2 FPS, which starts to sound a little insignificant, but the extra 3 FPS tacked onto the minimum is definitely welcome at these lowish frame rates. In Star Wars Battlefront, the Xtreme Gaming card pumped out a healthy 104 frames per second, just 2 more than its G1 gaming little brother. Overclocked, it was able to increase this margin to 8 FPS with 110 FPS on average. At 4K, the overclocked Xtreme Gaming card was close to 60 FPS with 58 on average and a nearby minimum of 53 FPS. Out of the box, it was also good for 55 FPS and a nice minimum of 49, which was level with the overclocked Founders Edition. Next up was The Division, where at 1440p you can count on 83 FPS on average. If you choose to overclock, then you can expect an extra 5 FPS for an average of 88, which is 3 more than the overclocked Founders Edition card. Now at 4K, the Xtreme Gaming card managed a 50 FPS average at its max overclock. The standard clock card gave us 47 FPS, which was the same as the GLH card and the overclocked Founders Edition. In the new Doom title, all of the 1080s crushed it, and the Xtreme Gaming card crushes it the hardest. Here it pumped out a massive 140 FPS with a minimum of 114. If you're an overclocker, then you can expect an even bigger 150 FPS average and a minimum of 121. Now at 4K, the 1080s were brought back down to earth for a still buttery smooth 72 FPS with a minimum of 58. Our last game tested was ARMA 3, and here overclocking netted a nice little gain of 5 FPS, putting a 3 FPS ahead of the overclocked Founders Edition card. There wasn't much fluctuation either, with the minimum frame rate within 5 FPS of the average. 4K just about halved our frame rates, with the Xtreme Gaming reduced to 43 FPS on average and a minimum of 39. In the past, I found Gigabyte are often quite aggressive with their power profiles, and it would seem this is true for the Xtreme Gaming card as well. Out of the box, the card consumed 297 watts, 31 watts more than the Founders Edition card. Once overclocked using the maximum voltage headroom that Gigabyte Xtreme Engine software would allow, the total system consumption increased to 322 watts, 56 watts above the stock Founders Edition card. Now this is where the Xtreme Gaming really impressed, the operating temperatures. That massive heatsink proved invaluable here, allowing the card to operate at just 67 degrees under full load in its out-of-the-box configuration. Keep in mind, this wasn't a temperature-controlled room maintaining a 21 degree ambient air temp, so that's a 6 degree improvement over the already impressive G1 gaming. It's also worth noting that the fans were operating at just 1200 RPM using the auto fan profile, so the card was almost silent. When overclocked, the operating temperatures increased by just 1 degree, though the fans did spin up to a barely audible 1600 RPM. To be honest, I was a little disappointed coming off my Gigabyte GTX 1080 G1 gaming review a few weeks ago. Granted, a lot of that had to do with the sudden realization that the GTX 1080 overclocks like rubbish, at least compared to what was rumoured. That initial disappointment though was brought on by what turned out to be unrealistic expectations. Once I moved past that, it was clear the G1 Gaming was a great product given the out-of-the-box performance and the fact that it cost less than the Founders Edition card. Following that, I was very impressed with the Gameware GTX 1080 Phoenix GLH, so the bar had been set and this graphics card exceeded it. In terms of performance, the Gigabyte GTX 1080 Xtreme Gaming matches what we saw from the Phoenix GLH. The out-of-the-box performance, overclocking headroom, and cooling performance are very similar, though the Xtreme Gaming does appear to have a slight advantage. Although looks are subjective, I also feel the Xtreme Gaming is the better looking product, and is probably the best looking GTX 1080 on the market right now. Not only that, but the cooler is a beast. The three 100mm fans work like a charm, and it's loaded with more copper than my hot water service. The PCB design and features are about as good as it gets, and the premium pack that I picked up has some very worthwhile goodies inside, particularly if you plan to do a little VR gaming. The current $700 asking price isn't that extreme either, at least relative to other GTX 1080 graphics cards. Once availability improves, this package could become a little cheaper as well. So, if you're after an aggressive looking GTX 1080 with a mostly black colour scheme, capable cooler, fancy RGB lighting and heavily upgraded PCB, then the Xtreme Gaming is for you. Does this take the current cake as the best GTX 1080? Let me know what you think in the comments, connect with me on social media. I'm your host Matt as always, and I'll see you guys next time. YouTubers like me depend on your support to continue improving the quality and content of our videos. To support the channel directly, consider becoming a patron to also get access to a heap of cool rewards and exclusive giveaways. Also, don't forget you can check prices and buy the products I looked at in this video through the Amazon links in the video description below. Thank you kindly for supporting me and the Hardware Unboxed channel. It means a lot to me and I really do appreciate it, and in return I'll continue to work as hard as I can to keep producing the content you enjoy.